Kenya's President William Ruto on Thursday defended his tough economic measures in his first State of the Nation address since coming to power last year, saying they were necessary to get the country back on track. And there has been widespread anger among Kenyans over his government's decision to remove food and fuel subsidies and implement a host of new taxes, with the country having to still deal with depleted government coffers, skyrocketing inflation and a plunging currency that has sent debt repayment costs soaring. Now, Ruto says he knows that these reforms are tough, but they are necessary sacrifices in order to build a better future. To talk more on this, I have Professor Iraki, is an economist at the University of Nairobi. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Now, President Ruto said his tough economic measures were necessary to get the country back on track, but the measures were at a huge cost to the people and not the government. So could he have taken another route to solving the country's economic woes and seen how to reduce the pressure and the sufferings on his people?
Thank you very good. Thank you very much for that question. It's a very interesting question because if you remember when President Ruto was campaigning, he promised he is going to reduce the cost of living, and he won. But what has happened now is that he campaigned against debt. And without debt, the only other source of revenue for the government happens to be taxes. So what he did is he raised the taxes. Raising the tax rates, or he also started taxing some goods and services that were not taxed before. So it seems that the Kenyans asked for it. Now he's taxing them. So it is a bit not very exciting for most people, but that seems to have been the alternative that he could take. The other alternative he could have taken was to reduce the government expenditure, which would probably mean losing some government jobs. And that is not very practical character. So he could have taken other measures, but for now, that seems to be the most appropriate measure he could have taken under the current circumstances.
Now, Professor, in August 2023, the year-on-year food inflation in Kenya increased to about 7.5%. And also there was the introduction of a pay-as-you-earn tax band of 32.5% for income between 500,000 Kenyan shillings and 800,000 Kenyan shillings, and 35% for income exceeding 800,000 Kenyan shillings. Now, Kenyans have been subjected to various direct and indirect taxes. You are saying that that is what they asked for. But then, is their anger justified by these taxes that has been brought forward by the government?
I don't think any Kenyan has a problem with paying taxes. They are very okay paying taxes.
So what, if you say, Professor, if you say that the Kenyans are not, that the Kenyans do not have problems with paying taxes, so why are they angry? Why are there protests? Why are they talking tough?
That's exactly what I want to explain, that Kenyans have no problem paying taxes. What they are saying is, are we getting value for the taxes we are paying? The other problem why Kenyans are unhappy is because taxes are going up, but the income is not going up. They're not getting more profits from their businesses. They're not getting more salary increases. So if they were getting services, if the salaries were going up, and if the profits for businesses were going up, they would be very happy. But now, that's not happening. And that's why there's a lot of anger on the streets, anger everywhere, that people are not getting value for the taxes, and they're not getting commensurate increase in their wages, in their salaries, and in the profits they are making.
Okay, well, well said. Now, let's look at the various new taxes and levies that were introduced as a result of the Finance Act 2023. We talk about the housing levy that's said to be chargeable on personal emoluments. There is also VAT rate on fuel that has been standardized to 16%, while also the rate on capital gains tax has been increased to about 15%. So, in as much as the government may justify these taxes, are there palliatives in place? Are there measures in place to mitigate the impact on the people? If wages are not being increased, salaries are not being increased, there is inflation, are there areas whereby there is reprieve for the Kenyan citizens, even as we see taxes rise?
Ask the question again.
So I said that we are seeing increase in taxes, but wages are not increasing. There's increase in inflation. There's increase in food inflation. Now, are there palliative measures in place to at least cushion the effect of these multiple taxes and, of course, the rise in the rate of taxes being paid by the citizens?
That is a big question that Kenyans are debating, that you are bringing more taxes, you are bringing more levies, but the source of money to pay that is not there. So what we need to do is probably make the economy very, very conducive to investment, to doing business, so that even if taxes go up or new taxes are implemented, we get money to pay that. And one of the arguments people are coming up with is, instead of increasing taxes, why don't you reduce the government expenditure? Why don't you postpone some of those taxes? Why don't you come up with a spread out tax regime so that some taxes come this year, others next year, and others year after that? So if that was possible and then the salaries went up, then Kenyans would be very happy. The problem is, if you raise the salaries today and wages, then there will be more inflation. So the government is caught between the hard rock and the deep ocean. And they seem to have decided, let's deal with taxes, we can deal with the political consequences out of that.
Okay, Professor, let me quickly take you to July. Global credit ratings agency Fitch Ratings downgraded Kenya's ability to repay international lenders from stable to negative, citing tax hikes and social unrest. Now, is this, looking at this now, is the Ruto administration not working on a thin thread, as thus hurting its profile in the eye of the global community? Because if we are having negative readings as a result of increase in taxes and the reactions by people, which is also affecting the business climate or the economy of the country, it might just have other attendant effects on the image or the projection or the way that Kenya is being perceived. So is that not going to have a gross adverse effect on the overall image and economy of Kenya?
There has been a big debate in this country about what the government inherited from the current government inherited from the previous government. They inherited a lot of debt, and some of those debts are maturing now, like the Eurobond and other debts that are owed to China and other people who are lent this country. So the moment has come when those debts must be paid, and the government does not have that money to pay those debts. So the alternative has been to go ahead and get taxes to pay for those for those debts. In fact, one of the reasons why the taxes are going up, more than inflation or anything else, is to pay for those debts. Now, the problem has been the interest rates are going up. The interest rates are going up, the inflation is going up. So that puts the government under a lot of pressure. But at one time, you have to pay debt. But when you increase the interest rates, then people find it very difficult to do business. And when there's downgrading of our credit rating, the interest go up further. So the government is squeezed between what the IMF and other multilateral agencies are saying and what the person on the street is saying. So it makes a lot of political sense for one to balance what the external readers are saying and what the political or the voters are saying. And that's why the government yesterday, through President Ruto, came open and saying things are difficult and we must tighten our belts. Politically is not very palatable, economically is not very palatable, but they are the leaders and they must make hard decisions. And I think that's what President Ruto said yesterday, and he made very hard decisions. They might not be very politically palatable, but economically he had to do that.
Okay, well, of course, we see that the government has defended the decision, saying that it is necessary to reduce the country's debt and deficit. But then there's a twist to it, Professor. Some Kenyans are skeptical about these government claims, and they are saying that these measures are simply a way of enriching the wealthy at the expense of the poor. Do you agree with this assertion?
That's very interesting. If I got your question right, if I didn't, I think I did not get your question very right. Can you please share it with me again?
So I said that some Kenyans are skeptical and are not trusting what the government or the Kenyan government has been saying in terms of the need to defend the budget, the need to defend the economy, the need to defend its fiscal space. And they are saying that this move or the various moves by the Ruto administration is all about seeing how the country can enrich the wealthy at the expense of the poor. So I'm just asking if you are aligning with this particular assertion, or maybe it's just a speculation.
That's a very interesting question, because this government came into power with a hustle narrative that they are going to help the rest privileged people, the so-called poor, the working class. But what has happened is that by bringing taxes, they are affecting the poor people disproportionately. So if you are a rich person and you are taxed, you have money to pay taxes, you have some savings. But if you are poor, you are a taxi driver, you are a barber, you sell vegetables on the streets, you don't have that money. So some people are feeling what you are saying, that maybe the taxes and the government policies are making some people poorer and others are more wealthier. But what the government is arguing is that we need just to bear this pain for some time before things improve. But the question is whether that is going to happen or not. So the people on the street are skeptical that that is going to happen. But if the government follows with words and deeds what they are saying, then probably the next 1 year or so, we might see some light at the end of the dark tunnel. But for now, people are skeptical about the government decisions and whether they are going to benefit the people on the streets.
Okay, so to just wrap it up, Professor, now Ruto has said that efforts to stabilize the situation have yielded progress in the last few months, and that will spill into the other months to come, even down to December and probably next year. And the country will be able to settle the first Kenya shillings in terms of debts being paid and bonds. That's about $300 million, or let me say 500 billion Kenyan shillings in installments of $2 billion Eurobond debt that falls due next year. So with this administration being able to offset its Eurobond bills or debts, what is the implication? I just need your reaction just about a minute. What's the implication of this? And is it a justification of Ruto's measures in raking in funds?
That's a very interesting question, because one of the things that has been worrying the government is the rising interest rates because of what you refer to as downgrading. So the government has been fearing that if they are not able to pay for the Eurobond, the interest will go up. And remember, they need to borrow money to run their business, to run their programs. So by paying the Eurobond area, the government is sending a signal to the global market that we are not going to default. We have the money to pay. So that might force the interest to go down because people might have more confidence in the Kenyan economy. So I think as far as I'm concerned, Dr. Ruto was justified in having an RPA for the Eurobond, because that is going to give a lot of confidence in the Kenyan market. And if it brings down the interest rates, the better for all of us, because we shall be able to borrow the money, we are going to invest, create jobs, and maybe pay more taxes in future.
Professor X. Iraki, Economist, University of Nairobi, thank you so much for talking to us on the show.
Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.
And you too, sir. Now, President William Ruto of Kenya has said the government owed it to the people of Kenya to do the right thing and make the tough decisions that are necessary to get the economy back on track. Now, the question is, how long will it take for the economy to be back on track before the citizens reach their breaking point, if they have not already gotten to that point? Now, we draw curtains on today's edition of Business Edge. Do not forget that you can follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can visit our website, www.newscentral.africa, and download our mobile app on App Store and Play Store. Thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of the show. Tomorrow is another time. Of course, it's the weekend. We will be back next week with another set of business-related topics to discuss with you on the show. I am Lekan, Onabanjo. Do have a fantastic weekend.